I'm Kiana Pelix and here's our video lesson in Lesson 5, Cultural Relativism and Ethnocentrism. So what is cultural relativism in the first place? Cultural relativism is the idea that norms, beliefs, and values are dependent on their cultural context and it should be treated as such. It means we should have to understand the culture by means of their own interpretation or how certain group of people understand that particular culture. We should have to place our own standards or we should have to place our own understanding by the use of their own standards. Take note that it is wrong to use our own standards in appreciating or understanding culture. So, from what I have said, cultural context and it should be treated as such. It means we have to identify or we have to define the culture based on the definition given by the group of people who are practicing that particular culture. Binibigyang diin nito ang idea na ang kultura sa bawat lipunan ay dapat na maunawaan at isaalang-alang sa sarili nitong mga termino. The principle is sometimes practiced to avoid cultural bias or to avoid judging another culture based on one's own culture. In cultural relativist perspective, walang anumang kultura ang nakahihigit sa iba. This is because cultural norms and values derive their meaning within a specific social context based on cultural relativism. It is also based on the idea that there is no specific standard of good and bad and thus that every decision of judgments of what is right or wrong is individually decided in each society. In practice, cultural relativism tries to promote understanding of cultural practices that are unfamiliar to other culture. According to James Rachels, the following claims have all been made by cultural relativists. Number 1. Each society has a diverse set of moral conducts. Number 2. The rightfulness of an action within a society is primarily determined by the moral standards of that society. Number 3. There is no objective standard that can be used as a basis of comparison among societies. Number 4. The moral code of our own society is just part of larger body of morality and ethical standards. Number 5. High tolerance among all culture must be exercised always. To understand further, I give you one example. Marriage is monogamy among the Christians but polygamy among the Muslims. From the word monogamy, the ratio is 1:1, one girl, one boy, one male, one female. From the word polygamy, meaning it's more than one, may isang boy and apat ang kanyang wife. In Muslim community, it's allowed. Polygamy is considered immoral and sinful among the Christians, but moral and appropriate among the Muslims. Kasi, di ba, dito sa atin, when you have multiple husbands or wives, that's already cheating na, di ba? It's against with the code of Christians Filipino, but in Muslim community, it is allowed and it is normal. If we are going to use cultural relativism, we could be able to understand kasi alam natin ang diversity ng culture and we use our own interpretation with that certain act based from the context of that particular group of people who are practicing that particular culture. So, hindi tayo nagiging judgmental kasi alam natin na may diversity and that is normal to them to have that kind of setup.
Wala si John Vincent M. Hain. At ano nga ba ang cultural relativist? According to James Russell, the following claims have all been made by cultural relativists. Each society has a diverse set of moral conducts. The rightfulness of an action within a society is primarily determined by the moral standard of that society. There is no objective standard that can be used as a basis comparison among society. The moral code of our society is just part of larger body of morality and ethical standard. However, in his critical analysis, he also posited some observational inconsequence of accepting cultural relativism. These are: it is difficult to determine if the custom of other societies is morally inferior to others. The decision whether actions are right or wrong can be done just by consulting the standard of our society. The idea moral progress is always questionable. The objective criticism, one of the own culture, is shallow. There will be no idea of moral progress because of acceptance to other cultures. So it means, according to James Russell, the aspect of mutual respect and understanding must be observed, and the decision whether actions are right or wrong can be done just by consulting the standard of our society.
Now, what is ethnocentrism? When people find cultural practices not their own as disturbing and threatening, that can be regarded as ethnocentrism. The term ethnocentrism was coined by William Graham Sumner. So let's go deeper from the definition of ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism refers to the tendency of each society to place its own patterns at the center of things. From the line, each society to place its own patterns from the center of things, it means they consider themselves as above from the rest. So, meaning to say their culture is superior and the rest of the culture that surrounded them is inferior immediately. So, that's the point when we stick to ethnocentrism. The practice of comparing other cultural practices with those of one's own and automatically finding those cultural practices to be inferior, that is ethnocentrism. Kinoconsider mong superior ang culture mo and the rest is inferior using your own standards. So, meaning to say, in judging or in making conclusions, ginagamit mo ang sarili mong kultura to justify that your culture is superior and the other culture is inferior.
Hi, I am Rosie Macmur. My topic is all about summer mention some characteristics of an individual with an anthrocentric view, ethnocentric person. In the Philippines, we have a lot of types of ethnocentric person, or should we say indigenous people, for example, the Muslim and the Catholic religion. In the Muslim community or religion, they have their own culture and beliefs that we cannot understand sometimes. Ethnocentric peoples are not open to other cultures and beliefs because they only have their own culture and beliefs. The ethnocentric individual believes that they're better than the other individuals for a reason based solely on their heritage, otherwise ethnocentric person. Behavior they judging other cultures and beliefs, even the clothes they're wearing and some other time they're judging them as what they hardly live themselves or even their foods and how they speak.
My name is Sarah May Anolito and I will discuss to you the topic of ethnocentrism. It can be seen in Philippine society that ethnocentrism is still emerging. The sense of identity seems to be a contributing reason for this. It goes deeper in our history that the mixture of different cultures has created several identity marks, resulting in our diverse cultural heritage, both tangible and intangible. Fortune of year 2016 made some observations on how to address this growing concern on Filipino ethnocentrism. Number 1. Identify indigenous culture that truly reflects Filipino identity. Number 2. Eliminate foreign influences and stick to homegrown practices. Number 3. If we want to settle our identity, we must accept the good part of the foreign influences that comes to us. Although colonization by the Spaniards, Americans, and Japanese has caused a shift in several of our cultural, social, political, and economic policies, It made the Philippines a single nation. Though the Philippines today stands strongly behind our acceptance of our Filipino identity marked by our appreciation of foreign influences, because if we will totally disregarded them, we will run the risk of being left with nothing but purely our own native culture and tradition that may alienate us from the globalized world. We need to acknowledge their part in the richness of the tapestry that is the Filipino culture.